Well, right now I'm standing in a good example of kind of a mid-growth age popple regen clear cut. I'm up in a chunk of big woods, public land area, and really this whole area has been cut over really heavily for the past, 15 to 20 years. There's almost no mature popple and balsam forests left in this area, but what we've been left with is a big kind of smattering of various age popple regrowth type clear cuts. And you can see behind me here, I'm in an ocean of popple regen, and it can seem kind of like a needle in a haystack trying to find these deer in areas like this. But what we found the best luck with is there's really kind of three things we're looking for up here, and that we have been able to concentrate deer doing so. The first is trying to find any kind of grassy pockets or any sort of openings, some type of edge transition cover that sort of mingles around in these clear cuts. And up in this area we have white cedars. A lot of times you'll be looking on Google Earth photos and you'll see some variation, some difference in the popple regen. You go check it out and it's just a super thick, super dense white cedar swamp, and the deer don't really seem to move around in those during the rut. But if you find an area like this, see all this yellow swamp grass behind me? These types of pockets out in these clear cuts seem to concentrate deer. And this is just a great example. My dad and I were out here scouting and we found this really nice trail coming out of this one. I can see it running back behind the camera, and then you can see behind me it continues this way. These little yellow grass pockets and openings really tend to congregate the deer and group them, pull them out of this popple regen. I mean, it's really just an ocean of popple regen in this area. And these little yellow grassy pockets seem to draw the deer into these areas. So that's kind of the first thing we're looking for in these clear cuts on the aerial photos is, where's this edge? Where's this variation? Sometimes you got to go check a handful of them before you realize it's a dead end. It's just a big dark white cedar swamp, or it turns out not. You strike out a lot more than you luck out, but you get into these little unique grassy openings like this and you start to see these trails kind of come spider webbing out of here. The next thing that you can do is try to find the end of a clear cut where it sort of comes to a point or comes to a funnel that may connect it to, say, another young clear cut or another clear cut that you found beds in or that they're using. It'll just do more for you as far as that hourglass effect goes. Just a random little patch of yellow grass out in an ocean of popple isn't going to concentrate deer as well as if you can find this yellow grass out towards the point of this clear cut. Maybe you got dark swamp on one side, maybe you got real kind of mature woods over here, and we're in this cutting, for example, kind of comes to a point right here. So that's the first thing that we're doing, is we're just looking for any kind of variation, any kind of diversity and transition zones in here as they converge and coalesce towards a point in the clear cut. Sorry for the brief interruption, but winter's almost here, and if you're someone who has young trees on your property that you need to protect from deer browse, you should check these out. They're called browse blockers. You just grab the top growth candle and branch whorl of the tree like this to pull the browse blocker over it. You clip it on, then you leave it like this through fall, winter, and spring. After spring green up, take the net and clip off and save them, because you can use them multiple seasons as this tree grows taller. This tree won't get browsed as long as this net is on it. If this is something that you think could help you out this year, you can check them out at browseblocker.com. And when you go to checkout, say that you saw this on YouTube, and my dad will throw in 10 free browse blockers and clips on top of whatever you order. Okay, now the next thing that we're keying in on in these types of areas are ash swales. And I just walked down into one. I was back this way, kind of behind the camera to the south, where this kind of middle growth age cutting clear cut kind of comes towards us here and ends right at this cedar swamp. This is the northern boundary of that A3 regen to the south, and these ash swales really are nice for a couple reasons. Number one, they seem to congregate deer again. We get these balsams that grow that are allowed to, that's actually a cedar, scratch that. There's some balsams back here over my shoulder that way. And they can get real bushy and full on the edges of these ash swales. And bucks like to rub under them. You'll find, or scrape under them. You'll find rubs around these things. And the other really nice benefit of these ash swales is you can shoot in them. There's really no practical way to shoot through that aspen regen that I started the video in. It's so thick. It's an absolute wall of cover, and you can't, there's no real practical way to rifle hunt in situations like that. So we're looking for those grassy pockets to kind of draw them in towards this point. That's where the trails emerge. And then we move into this low area, like behind me that I'm showing you guys. You can kind of see that deer trail right there going up behind me, going up the far bank. And this trail that deer trail that I'm standing on right now was beat down to the mud, which is actually really impressive because the deer numbers are terrible in this area right now. So you can see this really nice trail behind me crossing this ash swale. And that's the second thing we're doing, is just trying to key in on these, because where those deer trails come out of the clear cut, they tend to group and coalesce right into these ash swales. You can shoot through these, and I actually put a deer stand up, I don't know if you can see it, in these cedars right here. I got my ladder stand tipped up, and I can see and shoot through this ash swale. I'm going to be able to grunt and stop a buck and just let them have it in any one of these openings. I don't need to clear shooting lanes that, you know, just trim a couple small branches, things like that, to keep some lane open. But that's the second thing we're doing, is really trying to key in on these ash swales as those deer trails converge into the swale itself. All right, now I'm showing you guys the deer's destination. We're continuing north on this deer trail. This is their destination on the north side of that clear cut that I started the video in. We crossed through that ash swale behind the camera, and we're coming this way. This is about a 20-ish year old cutting behind me. So they're moving into this more open, kind of more mature popple stand behind me. The kind of the third thing here is just putting all this together. You're looking for that popple clear cut, kind of early young to mid growth age that has the trails, the droppings, and typically the buck sign, rubs and scrapes, mostly rubs in this area. You're trying to locate those clear cuts that have those things in them. You're looking for those grassy pockets and those diversity edges, transition edges, and where those coalesce to a point in the clear cut. And then once you find that, where can you get a deer stand in where you can get a shot at these things and group a handful of those trails together? And that's what I've done here with this ash swale. Is there's two really good trails coming through this ash swale, like really good deer trails. And then I can see a number of other kind of filter meandering trails that come through behind me, cross through this ash swale. So this is a point I got on the tip of a clear cut where all these trails sort of converge. I can get shots at them. And then they're moving up here into this more mature woods to the north of me. So that's the third thing, is just putting it all together where these trails converge and coalesce, and there's a confluence of movement. These woods are extremely big. There's just miles of unbroken cover, but there are deer back in here. And if you can just get into an area where you can group a couple of those trails together, you got a good deer stand. The hard part then is waiting them out. You know, this isn't like hunting over a food plot or in farm country where you're going to see all kinds of deer. You know, that's just not going to happen here in situations like this. They're few and far between, but the nice thing is if you get into some of these remote areas with low hunting pressure, you're not going to see many deer, but when you do see a buck, it's got a chance of being a nice one, a big one, something that's got some age to it. So that's how we're tackling these big woods clear cuts. They can seem pretty daunting, pretty hopeless at times, just with the, you know, sort of that ocean of cover effect, and they are. So that's why we don't just sit in the middle of them on one deer trail. We're using the strategy that I talked about here to pick our stand locations, and that's how we break down these big woods clear cuts. And you know, a lot of guys in camp are putting bucks on the pole every year, so it works. And I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you got something out of it, drop a like, and I will catch you guys on the next video.